Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. U.S. Vice President JD Vance arrived in Armenia on February 9th, marking the first visit by a sitting U.S. Vice President to the country. Now, his trip will focus on implementing the 2025 Washington Declaration, promoting the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, known as TRIP, and supporting deeper cooperation on political level. Joining us now to analyze the visit is Raffi Elliott, a political risk analyst, Armenian Mirror Spectator. Let's jump right into this. The significance of this visit by JD Vance. Tell us your take, why it matters for Armenia and the region.
So you're right that this is a very significant event for the region. JD Vance is the highest-ranking U.S. official in history as a vice president to have visited Armenia specifically. The last highest-ranking official was Nancy Pelosi, and before that, Hillary Clinton in her capacity as Secretary of State. The only U.S. president to have ever visited the South Caucasus was 20 years ago under the administration of George W. Bush. However, Bush only visited Georgia and skipped Armenia and Azerbaijan. This time around, it seems like it's the reverse. So this really underscores how important the TRIP agreement is for the Trump administration, and it's equally significant both in Armenia and in Azerbaijan.
All right. And the main focus here, I mean, we have this Trump corridor. I mean, this is a massive infrastructure project, still not quite fully ratified. Where are we with this, and what is Vance's trip here? Is it going to expedite this whole project? Tell us a bit more about that.
So to give you a little bit of historical background, Armenia, and for those who follow this show, would already know that Armenia and Azerbaijan have been locked in a historical dispute since the collapse of the Soviet Union over historically Armenian territory called Nagorno-Karabakh, that Armenians call Artsakh. That situation was essentially resolved through force of arms between 2020 and 2023, when Azerbaijan took over the region militarily. Since then, the two countries have been at horns attempting to sign a peace agreement where there is basically a zero trust situation between both sides. Azerbaijan has been taking its recent sort of advantage in trying to push Armenia to allow it an extraterritorial corridor which would connect Azerbaijan proper to its exclave of Nakhichevan, which is between Armenia and Turkey, for those who know the geography. So this has been a red line for Armenia, and Armenia has always insisted that Armenia would allow Azerbaijan to use its roads as part of a regular, naturalized agreement on trade and transfer of goods and people between the two countries, much like it would be to travel between Canada and the United States, for example, where you cross at a border checkpoint, you get your passport stamped, you go through, and then you continue on to Nakhichevan later. This Azerbaijan, however, has insisted on extraterritorial rights, anything short of literally transferring Armenian sovereignty to Azerbaijan. So, of course, this has been hugely unpopular amongst Armenians, especially in the opposition. So the Trump Road for Peace and Prosperity is interesting because while it covers the same geographical layover that this extraterritorial corridor would have taken, which the Azerbaijanis call the Zangezur corridor, the agreement specifically stipulates that it remains entirely in Armenia's sovereign territory. Armenia continues to retain the rights of passport control on the road. However, it gets to be administered by American companies for a 49-year concession. Now, what's important about this, though, is that it's seen as a stepping stone, in terms of reintegrating Armenia and Azerbaijan economically, and B, as part of integrating this region into a larger middle corridor that the United States has been pushing for a while, connecting Central Asia into Europe. So this is a massive regional integration project, which with it brings the potential for tens of billions of US dollars in foreign direct investment, both public and private. In fact, the JD Vance's mission to Armenia came with a massive delegation with at least 1,000 people and signed quite a few memorandums on economic cooperation with Armenia, and it's arguable that they might do the same with Azerbaijan. Specifically, JD Vance touted the fact that Armenia just purchased $11 million worth of U.S. surveillance drones, which is the first time that the United States has sold what can be seen as a military capability to a country in this region since independence. And Armenia has also announced that they were choosing the United States as a partner for building their new nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
This is also a major development and has been taking shape actually since the Biden administration. And in fact, it was one of the last agreements that the Biden administration signed before the transfer of power in Washington. And this is a big coup against Russia, which had been pressuring Armenia to ensure that Rosatom, Russia's state atomic energy producer, would maintain control over the only nuclear power plant in this region.
Okay, Raffi, I just want to ask you really quickly, there's much more here, but I want to ask you about Vance has now openly endorsed Armenia's Prime Minister Pashinyan. Elections there in Armenia do take place, I believe, in the summer. What does that do in terms of that endorsement coming from U.S. Vice President? Tell us briefly about that.
That's right. This announcement was made yesterday during their joint statement. This is quite unprecedented that a U.S. vice president openly endorsed a candidate in an election in another country. It's still quite soon to tell you what the outcome of that will be, but I could say that Prime Minister Pashinyan certainly welcomed that endorsement and in turn showered both the Vice President and the President of the United States with as much praise as he could legally provide. Certainly we could see this as a boost for the Prime Minister. It's important as well because a lot of the security guarantees or the implied security guarantees that the Prime Minister has been touting to his voters with the TRIP agreement came in the form of are being personally linked to President Trump himself. And Pashinyan has actually been quite successful in fomenting this personal relationship with President Trump. President Trump consistently refers to him as a good friend. They've exchanged personal phone numbers. At Davos, Trump tapped Pashinyan's leg. So clearly they seem quite comfortable with each other, which for a small and relatively geostrategically unimportant country like Armenia, that is quite a coup.
All right.
And it might serve them well in the next election, but it's
right.
to tell.
And we're going to obviously cover, as that trip continues, as you said, also to Azerbaijan. Look, we'll close it there. Thank you so much. Raffi Elliott there from the Armenian Mirror Spectator. Appreciate it. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.